So I'd now like to introduce Georgia. Georgia is Mayo Dark Sky Park, the park officer at the National Parks and Wildlife Service. And this is a Research Ireland PhD scholarship position through the University of Galway, exploring dark skies in society, tourism, and policy development. Georgia began studying dark skies and light pollution back in 2013, which led to her undergrad dissertation. In a voluntary capacity, Georgia is currently chair of the Friends of Mayo Dark Skies Community Group, deputy chair and founding board member of Dark Sky Ireland, which is an NGO which seeks to restore and protect dark skies across Ireland. Her work focuses on community engagement, policy planning, and the promotion of dark sky friendly lighting strategies in Ireland. Georgia has worked actually a lot with green schools and also with some of our third level sites, such as ATU Mayo. So we're absolutely delighted to welcome Georgia today. And I'm very much looking forward to your presentation. So please feel free, Georgia, to share your screen there and you can begin your presentation. And as I say, if anybody has any questions, you can pop them in the chat and we'll address them at the end.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Deirdre and Valentina, for having me and for everyone joining. So I'll skip through. Thank you for the introduction. I don't need to say any more about that. I've put a few slides together to look at different things, and I was thinking about the audience, and of course we're talking to different campuses around the country, so it might be just a little bit of a diversion, but a couple of slides just about the role and what we do in Mayo and the study before we move into dark skies and light pollution. So I've just got a little picture here of, this is me out in the field taking light pollution measurements, so the role of a dark sky officer. So usually you hear a day in the life of whoever, whatever the profession is. So in my case, it's a night in the life of a dark sky park development officer. And here's our crew and some members from different, from Armagh and the Armagh Planetarium and some of our astronomy club and our National Parks and Wildlife guides and rangers who all work together on this project. And over on the right is a picture from our dark sky walks, which will take place through the winter every week in Mayo to experience darkness as well as the night sky. So there's quite a lot involved in it. But I'll move on a little bit just to explain what is the Dark Sky Park. So I'm not sure if you have been already, but basically any place that can capture naturally dark skies overhead could potentially be a dark sky accredited site, whether that's a park or a reserve, depending on the size and the policy enacted. So we have this special place, Wildnafen National Park, which at night becomes Mayo Dark Sky Park. So it's a place where these natural dark skies are protected. It's accredited with an organization called Dark Sky International in Tucson. And they're protected as an important educational, cultural, and scientific resource. So we have these big skies and natural topography during the daytime, but at nighttime, we need to preserve what's naturally overhead too, and that's often forgotten about. So it's not really my office, but I'd like to think it is. This is a little hut called the Brogan Carroll Bothy up in a place called Letterkenny, which is about 20 kilometers north of the town of Newport. So here's where we do the dark sky walks on a weekly basis. And here's where we have some of the most magnificent sights for inspiration, for enjoying the sky, but also just for contemplating and a little bit of mindfulness. And that comes into this a lot as well. So we have these kind of eye-catching posters designed to capture that essence really of bringing people out and looking up. So our eye line shouldn't stop just on the horizon. It should, carry on, especially at nighttime. So that message of half the park is after dark is very strong in our engagement with the public. So just a little bit about what I do and the team that I work with do through the National Park. So I mentioned that half the park is after dark. That's our messaging through strategy. Last year we won the International Place of the Year for Dark Skies, which is a worldwide award, and there's over 240 places now within that grouping. So we're kind of punching above our weight for a little place in the west of Ireland. We've only been accredited 10 years, which isn't that much, but it's we've done a lot of work in that time. So the other programs that you'll see there, Carpe Noctem, that's all about engaging businesses, business communities and community groups and educating through these programs we have, such as Dark Sky Ambassadors and Dark Sky Champions. And that's where Dark Sky Campuses would come into it. So we connect Seize the Night as opposed to Seize the Day, so Carpe Noctem. And then Pale Blue Dot is our education strand for schools attending the site, and also for our new mobile planetarium, where we're bringing astronomy and multimedia and conservation into our education of night skies. So we have obligations as well. So it's about outreach, it's about connecting with people, but it's also about what we do through policy to try and leverage best practice lighting strategies to not only maintain our site as a dark sky site, but to expand on that and to, I suppose, educate on lighting as to how we can mitigate light pollution, because it is something, it's one of the easiest, if not the very easiest pollutions to fix. And it's one that's often overlooked. So it's something that we can do, and especially important for Climate Action Week, because there's so many synergies with dark skies. So a few photos just of some of our engagement events going on. From events in the local cinema, from the Dark Sky Festival down at the bottom right. That gentleman there actually, incidentally, is called Guy Consolmagno, who is, believe it or not, the Pope's official astronomer. The Vatican has its own observatory. So he wrote a book called Turn Left at Orion, which is kind of the Bible for astronomers who have a telescope. So it's a classic book. He's a co-writer on it, and he came to Newport and gave us a talk a couple of years ago. So the other picture up here, just to refer to, is some of the work that we've done on the local church in Newport to reduce light pollution, but also to make it something that people can visit at night and experience, in this case, the magic of the Harry Clark window projected onto the ground. So it's not causing light pollution because it's all down, but it is still intriguing for people and captivating, and it feeds into tourism and other initiatives. So that's what the certificate here is all about, getting people trained to mitigate and to work with us on light pollution and dark skies. So moving to my, as Deirdre mentioned, I'm a student of dark skies as it's a practitioner researcher role. It's through the Research Council, Research Ireland now is the Irish Research Council as it was. And I'm just coming to the end now of a 4-year study. So this book here is one of the chapters that I contributed to, which is available for free as a download. If anyone's interested afterwards, let me know. But I focused on using the theoretical frameworks of therapeutic landscapes, as I mentioned, darkness and mindfulness, but also sustainable and regenerative tourism and the regenerative pathway for dark skies, which connects with all of these, I suppose, multidisciplinary themes that we're looking at. So I've taken this and used it through to collect data through the medium of dark sky walks and through dark sky interviews at night. So walking in natural darkness to gather my data. So moving into policy, we work on that too, and where this is going in the long term, because it's all very well us talking about dark skies, but if they are not protected, and right now there is no protection for dark skies, in the long term we will sadly lose the pristine skies that we have at the moment. So for the first time with our new programme for government in 2025, there was mention of dark skies within a programme. So the government has committed to promote and encourage an expansion of Dark Sky Ireland national parks and reserves. So that really means that we need to pay attention to places that are already naturally dark and are already perhaps national parks or protected sites to some extent. We're also mindful that the nature restoration law that you've probably heard a lot about now includes a measure for reducing light pollution, so that all member states are obliged to include measures to stop, reduce or remediate light pollution in all ecosystems as part of their nature restoration plans. So we have to deliver that as a state by September 2026. which coincides with Ireland's presidency of the EU Council. So these are quite significant steps that we have to take forward, and it's really important that we know what it's about in terms of the nocturnal work that needs to be done and the light mitigation. So I suppose with that, what is light pollution? It is quite simple. It's really, you can coin it as I've written here, the inappropriate or excessive use of artificial light. So we're not saying no to light. We're not anti using light at night in any way, but we are just advocating for good practice and use it appropriately and not excessively. So light pollution falls into these 5 categories. Glare is the most common because of that harsh blue glare. Quite often people describe it as a blinding or a visual discomfort when you're blinded by the light. And that's quite common now with some of the newer LEDs that we have in public lighting, but also on our car headlights. That's probably the most common feedback we get at the moment. Sky glow is the result of light pollution, basically. So that hue over your towns and your urban areas. Reflected light is often not talked about, but because we have often wet streets in the west of Ireland particularly, we have a lot of light rebounding off hard surfaces and going back up into the sky, which exacerbates. And because we have a lot of cloud cover as well, we find that light reflects off the water particles in clouds, so therefore you get an exacerbated impact and extra light pollution from a simple what could be one source, but could end up multiplying by several hundred times. Obtrusive light, that's where light is falling where it's not needed. So that might be your neighbor's light or a security light that's just not angled appropriately, or it might be on when it shouldn't be. And then clutter is kind of self-explanatory. There's a lot of different lights going there with no strategy behind them. And are they really doing what they should be doing? So I suppose the outcome of this, and when we illuminate the sky, it's wasted energy. It doesn't look particularly pretty, although arguably it can be used in artistic installations. So I've used a photograph here of a picture called Light Ballet, which is set up a few years ago, and it was a short-term installation. So you could say, what harm is that really? But that installation traveled down the Shannon for several miles, and those lights could be seen for miles and miles away. So that we'll talk about ecology a little bit in a moment, but that does have consequences. And then we have this sky glow that's all around. So both from the urban areas, but also sometimes sports lighting where it's not controlled or it's left on can leave this sort of cloud image, which is Castlebar actually, mostly from sports lighting left on a little bit longer than it should be. And then I've put a campus in, my own campus, University of Galway. I think, and again, arguably, it is a very nice photo. Sorry, I'll just get back to that. It's a really nice photo. There's nothing wrong with the picture, and it's a beautiful campus. But we have 2 types of light pollution going on there. We've glare and we have sky glow. So these are things that we can fix. And a few more just to, I suppose, reinforce. So that this picture on the bottom right is the photograph from the Dark Sky Park when we had a lot more light pollution in Newport, but that's a one which is a positive story because we have fixed it. So I'll show you more about that in a moment. So I mentioned ecology and ecosystems and the impact that light pollution has. And this is really, I think, important, especially for green campuses, just to bear in mind, energy is one thing, but sometimes the more focused you are on energy efficiency with lighting, it means that you're going into a very blue light in terms of LED because they're the most energy efficient. But that also has more impact on biodiversity and wildlife than say a warmer tone of light. So there's 2 things you can do. You can turn it off, obviously, but if you need it, we're not advocating for no light. So therefore, you can change the color and you can think about direction and those other things that come into it. So light pollution in the sky glow, up here we have the loss of navigation opportunity for migrating birds and other species that use the stars and moonlight to navigate or to avoid predation or to be governed by the cycle of moonlight and other celestial bodies. Then we have light that shines all night or shines around. So this contributes to sky glow. But if we have light that's shining all night, it could disrupt bats, which is an obvious one. And that's a firefly there. So this is not an Irish image, as you might have guessed. But some of our mammals, most of our mammals are nocturnal. So it disorientates them and it might attract them away from what they're supposed to be doing or out of the cover of darkness. Then we have aquatic species, which is often not talked about. So, for instance, salmon, but also silver eels, which migrate around this time of year, and they need a new moon. So they won't cross if there's a light going into from a bridge, say, going into a water body. They won't pass that because they think it's moonlight, and they're looking for a new moon, i.e., the darkest part of the moon cycle, to migrate. So there are impacts on those species, and then of course our invertebrates, our pollinators, especially our nocturnal pollinators who do such an important job on crop yields and fruit yields. And then obviously it has a knock on with the ecosystem, because if one species is not doing what they should be doing, they're out of the area of darkness, then it might impact up the food chain for others and so on. This little illustration or film footage here, it's only a couple of seconds, but it just shows you, I'll let it finish. It just shows you how insects are gravitating towards the cooler light, which is possibly slightly more energy efficient than the one on the left. But for our purposes, from a human point of view, the one on the left does the job we need it to do. So we can still have that light at night, but we're not drawing insects away from their natural area. So first of all, we're not exhausting them. And what research has told us is that of these insects that are drawn away from the food chain, so the statistics reckon that about 450 insects per lamp per night can be drawn away from their natural habitat. And that has consequences. And of those, about 30% don't survive the night. So that's a massive impact on pollinators. And, you know, we are in a pollinator crisis. There's a lot of good work being done to raise awareness of pollinators, but light at night is something that is not often talked about. So I think we need to pay a little bit more attention to that when we have so many street lights, we have so many security lights and other types of lights that are left on right through the night. And that does have an impact. So I suppose moving to campuses, we need to talk about security, and that's again, you know, we're not advocating for no light, but sometimes the types of light that are employed don't really do what they should be doing. So I'm going to point out this crossing here, which is taken on an American campus, where the light is really only illuminating the tree and the sky. It's not particularly doing a good job on illuminating the ground where we need it to. So if we look at the next slide, the question is, where did the student go? And just look a little bit more closely, and if you look into the dark shadow that's created by the artificial light, you'll see the student is standing there in the dark. So these, especially for women at night, we have, you know, to make sure that our campuses are very safe and they're lit appropriately. But by creating really dark shadows, we're not doing what we should be doing in terms of security or making them safer. And a lot of light is installed during daytime practice, but not checked at night. So I'd argue that that's probably the case here, that these things are put up during the day and it's assumed that they're doing what they should be doing at night when they're actually not. Right, that's there. So just looking at the growth of light pollution, because this is quite remarkable really in terms of what we've done over a very short space of time. So the map shows us from 1997. It's prepared by Professor Brian Espy in Trinity College. So what he's done is take satellite data measurements and to just map out our light at night in Ireland. And as you would have expected, you know, urban areas look brighter at night. So where it's white, that's showing us that the overhead view, the zenith, is at least 10 times brighter than a natural night sky. And the dark green is showing us a natural night sky if we looked out. So again, you would expect the peripheral areas and areas that are less densely populated are less bright. If we fast forward to 2015, you can see that that has had a significant impact, much more than the population growth or development growth. So we're using light far more than we probably need to. And that was 2015, which is already 10 years ago. So I don't have the latest graph yet, but that just shows us that we've really covered the whole country at night with artificial light to some degree. There's different gradients here. But as Professor Espy has pointed out, those areas that are sort of pinky, orangey color, they can't see the Milky Way straight overhead. And those areas that are very white, the people living there have no dark adapted vision. So it means they're always using the cones in their eyes to see at night. We use cones for color vision, usually during the daytime, and we use our rods at night where we should use a little bit more subtle, less color vision. But where you're living in urban areas that has no nighttime effectively, because it's so bright, it's daytime all night, you never use your dark adapted vision. So what it also does, and I've put here, it closes wildlife corridors. So obviously nocturnal species that we mentioned before need to move from place to place, whether that's bats or badgers or other species, but or waterways. So by closing off those corridors, we're causing an unintended, I would say, impact. When we started the Dark Sky project back in 2013, one of the, I suppose, the things we had to overcome was the attachment to light in terms of our language and our culture. So it is something that, if you're talking about dark skies and especially campuses, there are sensitivities to overcome and just to be mindful of that this is very much a two-way negotiation on how we light differently. It's not, we're not, especially if you are starting a new project on campus, go in with, listening to both sides and try and get some consultation. But some of the feedback at the start is, because of the associations with light meaning good or godly or heavenly, therefore automatically the assumption is that dark is bad. And also in economic terms, we often hear about going back to the dark ages, or are we going to be able to leave the lights on, metaphorically. But crucially, the difference is we're trying to advocate for the difference between better light rather than just more light. I mentioned color before because it impacts biodiversity, but it also impacts on our own well-being. And there are projects in Ireland now happening that are investigating the impact of blue rich light, glare and flicker, particularly from LEDs, and how that impacts young adults and children. So that in the UK, they've done some work on LEDs from streetlights, and some of them have been reversed because of the concerns of excessive blue rich lighting at night. Now, we don't have long-term statistics on the impact health-wise, so I would caution how that's used. But at the same time, where we don't know, we should be applying the precautionary principles. So if we don't know it's the research yet, then we need to. What we do know is how it impacts biodiversity, so we should look at light a little bit differently. And here it's just, if again, for help if you're looking for new projects on campuses. Dark Skies aligns with so many of the Sustainable Development Goals. So I've mentioned health and well-being, and wildlife, but also science and astronomy. So there's some obvious ones and some maybe less so. Arts and culture. How many songs can you name that are influenced by the night sky? How many poems? It's really embedded in our literature and our storytelling as well. Then topically for this week, climate action, but also then sustainable tourism and regenerative tourism that I'm looking into with this study. It's very much multidisciplinary. This map, I wanted to put this up just to, I suppose, emphasize the point about the different color lighting and where it impacts us and our own, I suppose, daily cycles, our circadian rhythm. So if you look at the color scheme below, is just showing the lighting spectrum, and then the graph, the thick line is where the lights at the moment, if they're too blue, where that color point peaks, which coincides when we wake up in the morning on our circadian sensitivity. We wake up when the sky is blue, and we're programmed for that, to wake up, and our bodies are awake and alert, and we do our duties during the daytime, and we wind down at night when it's sort of sunset and we're ready for bed. So that's our normal circadian sensitivity. So if we keep that blue light on all through the night, then we're keeping ourselves awake. So our message is that if we take that light sensitivity out and move it to a sort of a more yellow color, then you're not interfering with the circadian sensitivity. You're not waking people up at nighttime, but you're still using light in the same way that that lamp example where I showed you, where there's pollinators going to a blue light. If we use different color light, then we can still have a win-win at night. So this is some of the work we're doing in Mayo to produce a dark sky county, and the map here shows us the overlay of sensitive habitats, so either SACs, so special areas of conservation, or SPAs, special protected areas, as well as the dark sky park, which is up here in the middle. So these corridors that I was talking about have closed off between the urban areas, and we're working with the county to see, the county authority to see, can we get a light pollution policy in place? And they are actually very proactive on that, which we're quite proud of them for, because it will be something that's transferable in the future. And these are just some principles, and we can share all of these afterwards, so I won't go through them one by one, but in terms of getting responsible outdoor lighting, there's some simple controls, and it is kind of obvious stuff, not having the light on when you don't need it, but the color that I mentioned before is key as well for biodiversity. So some of the actions and some of the other places that are looking at dark skies for campuses. I'm delighted to say ATU Mayo are already started on their, they were the first green campus, and they're hoping to be the first dark sky campus by doing some first survey work, but it's also driven very much by the student interest and getting the students out, taking measurements, taking surveys, doing some organized events and groups. And these are the kind of ideas that you could replicate in other places. So, ask questions, go out in groups, or, as I say, organize groups, don't go out, expect people to go out on their own. There are apps and tools that we can encourage you to use to take surveys on light. And by doing that, you're also educating the group as to how much light is actually in use at night. And this is just part of this image here is part of a light management plan that's being prepared in Minnesota. So they've shown on the left their existing lighting, and then the plan for how they make changes. And you can see, they've still got as much light on the ground, so it's still perfectly well lit, but it's not impacting the wildlife or the sky glow as much. So that comes, that's one of the initiatives coming out from the US called Campus Shine. So if you wanted to have a look at that, there's lots of information there on guiding through these pilot projects, and I suppose getting education, and I say linking, as I said before, with the Sustainable Development Goals to see what's appropriate for your campus. These are a few from different campuses. I've done a lot of night walks around in different places, so you can, if you know the campuses well, you can guess them. But just some of the way that's actually Duncan Stewart was on one of the events that he came to with us. He came to speak at, but what he was doing actually was deliberately hiding in the shadows. And waiting for us to walk along to see, was the lighting doing what it should do? And really, all it was doing was creating a ton of light on the people walking, but it was not illuminating the darker area. Whereas if that light was a little bit softer, your peripheral vision would kick in, so you'd be able to see in the shadows a little bit better. So it's not that sort of runway where you're the person on display, and you're not able to see what's in the shadows. And again, architectural lighting, I'm all for making, our buildings look beautiful at night, but, these kind of floodlights that we put, and especially this one is just going up into the sky. It's not even aimed correctly. So at night, they become pretty big contributors to sky glow. And then some of the lighting here that could be very easily curtailed just to illuminate just the pathway rather than the trees as well. And some of them are just a little bit high, or perhaps this one up here is not angled down. It should be a little bit lower rather than completely vertical. So these are simple changes. And that's an illustration of the same thing in I suppose before and after. So if we can get campuses to take photos before and then to show after, it's a really good exercise to see, what you can do and what difference it makes. And then you can tie that in with maybe some biodiversity projects to see what was it like before? Do we have bats? Have we attracted them? Are we keeping them away? Water bodies, etc. There's lots of different projects you can do. The swifts are a significant species for the ATU campus, and the fledglings need darkness, but they also keep they feed at dusk and then they go back to rest at night. So when there's too much light on buildings, they get disorientated when they're going back to their nests, but also they're not resting when they should be. So it has a knock-on effect over time. This is residential, so again, very simple change here. And this doorway, you can't see where you need to put your key in by just putting a little shield and angling it down. Now you can see the door handle, and you've got, I think, a better light. And this is one of the links that we're going to share afterwards. It's a project called Night Lights. And we're really proud of this because we had involvement through the University of Galway initially to take part in a global survey data that had a publication in Nature Sciences earlier this year. So we just took a small amount of data, but I think it's very replicable and it's something that we can use on campuses, and indeed ATU have started to do so. And it's just looking, using stickmen for identifying how big is a window, how much light is there in the area. It's really easy to categorize, and you just have it's a web app, so you don't need to download anything. And you're looking at different types of light in the environment, and you do it in a buddy system. Go out in the evening. There's a tutorial on it for 20 minutes before you get started, and that could start off your what does a survey for you, but it could start off your project to get dark sky campus classification. These are some instruments that we use in the Dark Sky Park for measuring. This is a slightly different thing to measure how dark is my sky. That's, I suppose, for observations. And that would be good to show a difference between too bright and any improvements that you can make. And this is just about if you are going out to take sky darkness measurements, to make sure you try and go out on a new moon, so when there's no moonlight, and when the nighttime really begins when the sun is 18 degrees or more below the horizon. So we have, the period of astronomical and nautical twilight first. So citizen science is another good way to capture how dark or otherwise the night sky is near you. And this is a reporting system that covers the globe. So it is literally theglobeatnight.org. And there's tutorials on there. And what you are doing is looking at a known constellation. So they'll show you how to find Cygnus, and they're asking you to count how many stars you see in that constellation. So it also gets you learning about the night sky and what's in it, and different stars, and that's kind of fun as well. And you can do that as a group event or tie it in with an observation evening. I mentioned pollinators. So we were involved in this guide for nocturnal pollinators, mainly because of those statistics I mentioned earlier. 450 insects per night are attracted to a single light that's on all night. So that must be having an impact. And the All Island Pollinator Plan have featured this guide, which is available as a download. And it also shows you things like how to develop a moon garden, which you could do on campus, again, for attracting nocturnal pollinators to an area where perhaps there isn't that much light, and the flora that you've selected is appropriate for nocturnal pollinators. These are a couple of ideas of getting light from perhaps how it shouldn't be, so the blue light, to go away from this and to go more to that subtle downlight use of lighting strategies where the task lighting is still sufficient, but you're not causing upglow or sky glow. Another one here for a hotel or commercial premises. And I've popped this one in because I stayed in, I won't name the hotel, but I stayed in a hotel a few weeks ago, and this is the result of the outside lighting shining into the bedroom at night, which was pretty horrendous. So it's, of all colors they could have picked, bright blue. So it was kind of like a laboratory in there. And even when I pulled the curtains, you still had that light creeping in. So not a great night's sleep. We can do better. Sports lighting, I've mentioned that sky glow and the contribution there. So again, angling them down and just thinking about the controls. They don't necessarily need to be all on. So especially for training matches, you might need to, you might try and think about a lower level of light. And also, you know, whether they have shields or they're directed, that can make a big difference. So again, you know, to tilt them down, have a lighting policy so they don't annoy neighbors, say after 10 o'clock, because a lot of complaints we get come in from sports lighting. And we want to be promoting sport. We want to be encouraging people to train at night, but it's a two-way thing. If we can have good quality lighting as well, that helps. This is the church that I mentioned in Newport before we did the retrofit. So that white light, really glary, really wasting energy on all night, and just creating this sort of whitish color in the sky. So we had a lighting designer come and look at it and identify what are the really nice features of that church, because it was never designed to have floodlights on it, but you know, he picked out things like the little crevices up here and where we could put some subtle lighting, and so it's not on all night, so there is a chance for nature to rest, and illuminate the archway. And a lot of the local people said they hadn't even noticed the carvings in the archway until he did that, because before it was just too glary, you just couldn't pick out one feature from another. And using these kind of heritage type of lanterns instead of the street lights that they had on before, it's more sympathetic with the heritage build itself. This is residential, again, softer lighting, but still purposeful. And the one on the right is our national park walkways. And these kind of infographics I can circulate afterwards or through Valentina, so you can, you know, just see in simple terms what's good and what's not so good. I'm going to mention this conference, even though it is closed now, but we have a conference coming up at the end of October. So if you just keep an eye on the socials, you might hear about it. We've got the world's leading scientists coming to County Mayo for 3.5 days to present their work on dark skies and on light pollution. So we have about 200 people coming over. The event itself only takes place every other year. So it hasn't been in Europe because it alternates between the North and South America. It has been in Europe since 2016, I think, because of COVID and a gap. So we're delighted to have it in Mayo, and there's 30 different countries booked to attend. So it's very international, and hopefully there'll be some good outcomes afterwards. And that is closely followed by the Mayo Dark Sky Festival. So the conference, which is booked out, but the Mayo Dark Sky Festival, that's still open, and that's very, very reasonable price. I think it's 25 quid for a day of events. And then on the Sunday night, we have Keela closing the event after a lantern parade through Newport. So it's going to be really good fun. And with that, I will leave you with our motto. So we are trying to help citizens to name more stars in the sky than stars on the screen. And I think it's a nice aspiration to have. And if we have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Or if you want to go to the movie, Deirdre, we can do that too.